Alright, today we're going to take apart the HTC M8, the one with the two cameras on the back. Go ahead and turn the phone completely off, and grab a heat gun or a hair dryer and just heat up the phone gently on the top and the bottom. We're not trying to heat up the screen, we're just trying to heat up the little metal plates that cover the earpiece and the camera. Once they're warmed up, just take a little razor blade and slide it underneath the metal plate. Make sure not to put the razor blade down towards the phone, because there is some stuff under there that you can damage. So lift up these metal plates. Doesn't matter if you damage them, they're pretty cheap and inexpensive to replace. There are 4 T5 Torx head screws at the bottom and 2 normal Phillips head screws up at the top. Tools and parts will be listed down in the video description below. Take out the SIM card. There's probably 2 in your phone, so make sure you take out both SIM card trays before you start to pry the back off of the device. I've taken my razor blade because it's a small, thin little tool that can slide in between the screen and the back plate and unlatch each little clasp that holds the screen and frame into the back plate itself. It is a pretty big pain trying to get this thing apart. It is not easy. I did take a little bit of heat and heat up the back of the phone as well, just in case there was some adhesive back there holding the screen onto the metal frame itself. The whole take apart process took about 10 or 15 minutes, so go slow and take your time as you're pulling that back plate off. Here's the back plate itself. You can see a little screw holes and the camera lenses. There is a glass camera lens up for the top camera, so if that breaks, you're just going to have to pop that out of its little slot and replace it from the inside. Take off the tape that's holding down the little ribbon cable connectors. There's 2 of those. Make sure you put this in a spot where it won't get damaged, because you will want to put it back on the phone again when we're done. Lift up each of these little white clasps. They can break, so be very careful as you're lifting them up. Probably use a little plastic tool. And then you can just slide the little ribbon cables out from the little clasp itself once it's lifted up. Pretty straightforward. You can just watch as I'm doing it here in the video. Once again, all replacement parts and tools will be found in the video description below. You can grab these little wire cables and lift them up. These ones are attached down towards the charging port. And then this one right here along that side as well. There's some more ribbon cables up here along the top. This is the most ribbon cables that I've ever seen in a phone, so congratulations HTC. There's 2 screws holding down the battery connector to the motherboard, so just lift that up and you can see it's just kind of like a little Lego connection. Once you lift it up, it's unsnapped. There's 3 screws holding on the motherboard to the frame, so take those out. 2 more wire cables up at the top, and the motherboard will slide away from the phone. So here's the motherboard. It's got the Qualcomm processor in it, as well as all the memory and RAM and everything else that your phone needs to work. None of it is user replaceable, so unless you have some pretty complex soldering tools, you're just out of luck. Here is the loudspeaker, which is user replaceable. It's got just a little ribbon cable connector that plugs into the motherboard, and once again the parts will be listed in the video description below. Just like the charging port, lucky for us, is replaceable. Usually one of the things that goes out first on a device. The headphone jack is also included with this part as well, which is nice. Battery comes out fairly easily. There is a little bit of adhesive that holds it to the LCD, so be careful when you're sliding your pry tool underneath, because all of the pressure is going on the LCD as well. And if you plan on reusing your screen, you want to be gentle. Make sure you pull away those volume rockers as well, so you don't damage that cable when you're pulling the battery out. Here's the battery. It's a 2600 milliamp, pretty decent size for a cell phone. Replacement batteries hopefully will be found in the video description as well. 4 screws holding down the daughter board, and if you're smart, you'll take out the little screw holding the camera in as well, so when you pull that away from the board, it'll come with it. Remove the SIM card ribbon cable, as well as the front-facing camera ribbon cable and the vibrator motor plug. You just want to unplug that from the little device itself. So the power button up here at the top is held down in a little slot, so slide that up and out. And it is also connected to the top of the front-facing camera. It's a little grounding strap, so make sure you pull that off as well. Front-facing camera comes away once the motherboard is away from the phone, daughter board, sorry. It's a 5 megapixel camera. And then here's the camera, the dual camera on the back of the phone. It's probably in a metal case because any variation in the distance would mess up the depth perception feature that the camera is used for with the phone. It's a pretty unique little thing that HTC has going on. There is the earpiece, and now here is the replacement screen. See, the screen comes with the metal frame as well as the two replacement brackets that go over the front-facing camera and the bottom speaker. So if your replacement screen does not come with all of this stuff, you probably bought the wrong piece, and you're going to want to get the whole replacement kit, because the glass only repair is a completely different repair and very, very, very difficult. Now to put the phone back together, I clasped the rear facing camera into the motherboard first, daughter board, and then set that into place along with the front facing camera. Just plug those little ribbon cable connectors in like Legos, slid the power button back down into a slot and grounded it on top of the front facing camera again. And now I'm plugging back in the SIM card trays. Remember, there's this one and one more on the other side, so be very careful when you are plugging those back in. Get the vibrator motor plugged in. If you are replacing your screen, you'll probably need to transfer the vibrator motor over from your old screen to your new one. Don't forget to do that unless you don't like vibrations. Get those 5 screws plugged into the daughter board, and the battery can go back into place. Make sure you have all of the ribbon cables on the correct side of the battery. You don't want to be looking for those later on when you're trying to put it all back together again. Get the charging port back into place. Really pleased that this is user replaceable. It's nice that HTC made it easy for us. Lift up the rear camera a little bit when you're sliding the motherboard back into place. It does need to be sitting on top of the motherboard. Then grab the ribbon cable connectors, plug them in, and then just latch each one of them down individually. Make sure they're pressed in as far as they can go. There's little tabs on each of the little ribbon cables that you can use to press in and plug it into the little slot. And these little wire cable connectors, make sure it's seated correctly on top of the little plug before you press it all the way in. 3 screws on the motherboard, plug in some more wire cables in, battery cable, clasp it in like a little Lego, get those 2 screws back into place as well. It's really important that you keep your screws organized, obviously. They're all different sizes, so keep them grouped together, maybe label them on a piece of paper as you're taking your phone apart. Pretty straightforward with all these little ribbon cables. Plug them in, latch them down, and keep on going. This is a little short, stubby little guy, so you gotta kind of wiggle him into place and then use the extra tabs and then maybe some leverage so you can plug him back in and have him stay there. Get the little wire cables pressed back into place. Make sure you're seated correctly. You don't want to bend the little connection on the main board, because once that's bent, you don't have a second chance. So get it on there and press it into place, and you're good to go. I'm going to test my screen before I put the back plate on, because that is honestly the hardest part of this repair, getting that back plate on and off. It looks like my screen is good to go. The touch sensitivity works, color looks fine. If you have any lines or anything else in your screen, test the connections first. If they are still there after all the connections are good, then you probably have a bad screen. Get the tape back into place over those ribbon cable connectors. And then I had a problem with my power button falling out. I don't know if that's going to be an issue with everybody, but just make sure that's placed well into the frame. And then start with the charging port end of the phone. And then once that's pressed in, you can press the rest of the phone in place. My power button fell out again, but after some convincing, I got it back into place and snapped the screen back into the metal frame. And you can see it snapped in fairly well. You can hardly tell that the phone has been taken apart. Make sure to screw it back in, bottom 4 screws and the top 2 screws. Now here's the cool part. These are the replacement metal pieces for the top and bottom of the phone. They're actually really inexpensive, so it's probably worth your time to buy the replacement ones instead of trying to make the old ones work. They come with their own adhesive, which is really nice. You can just take it, press it into place. I usually lined it up with the bottom of the screen and then just snap the rest of it into place fairly easily. Pretty straightforward. I did find out that the lens from my first piece and second metal piece was different, so I had to take off the front facing camera lens from the old screen and then use the new screen pieces to just set over the top of it, and it worked a lot better. You can see the old camera lens just sitting there on the bottom. But since it has a new one, it's just fine. Make sure there's no dust or anything down inside of that when you're putting it back together. Get the SIM cards in place. And there you go. Once again, all parts and tools and everything that you'll need will be found in the video description below. Don't forget to like if this video helped you, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks a ton for watching. Hope to see you around.